Hello everyone and welcome back to another Mastermind tutorial. Today I want to take it back to the basics. We are going to start with an Ultramarine and we're going to focus on doing a simple paint scheme on this Ultramarine. So to begin with, I've already done a little sample shoulder pad here for you guys to see. It's basically 3 colors and a wash. So the colors we're going to be using today: solid black from Reaper, the Ultramarine blue from Vallejo Game Color, and the Arctic white from Vallejo Game Color. Now, when we are painting basic marines, we want to start with our first layer. Now, for my beginning layers, I'm going to use this size 4. This is a miniature brush from Vallejo. It has a nice thick big grouping of bristles, good for laying down lots of paint when we want to. So to begin, I'm going to use my Ultramarine blue here. I'm going to get a decent amount, and then probably about 25% of this Reaper black mixed in, just to deepen the color a little bit for our shadows, right? So let's start on this leg here. Now this is a model he's seen some better days. He's been repurposed. He's getting another paint job here. So we're gonna restore him to some glory. If you can restore a Primaris Marine that has already been out for a little, well, not that long. They've been out for, I guess, a year. I don't know. I don't get to play much anymore. I paint a lot, and with that, I don't get to play. So let's go ahead and let's coat this whole leg. Now, when you're painting, you want to make sure that your bristles on your brush are wet before you start loading it with paint. What that will do is it will protect the brush from damage later on. That water that you put in the brush keeps the pigment from soaking all the way down to the end of the brush. And you can see I'm not loading my brush all the way down to the ferrule. That's one thing you want to avoid. Don't jam the paint all the way down onto your brush, because what will happen is all that paint will dry right here, and then the bristles will start flaying out, and you won't have that nice sharp point that you used to have with your brush. Now this brush has seen some better days because I use it as a base coating brush, but I have gotten some years of use out of it, and I still like to use it for base coating. All right, we got a good base coat on our boot and shin here. Rinse out my brush, get it nice and clean before we move on. All right, detail brush. Now this is a size 0, Winsor Newton. Good detail brush, good for laying down paint. All right, so first we mix some black in. What we're going to do is we're going to layer. So we're going to take some of this blue, and we're just going to use straight blue. I'm going to put it on my palette next to this this darker color so you can kind of see the difference here. But I just want to add a little bit of brighter color to this. Now what I'm doing is I'm creating a little bit of a divide there. I am outlining where I want my next color to be on the model. Now I can see a line here between these two colors, and that's okay, because this is for basics. This is for tabletop. We don't need to blend that, and we're not going to be concerned about blending it. We're just going to create a nice gradient for our leg here. And we'll go back and we'll do some things to make this, make these plates stand out a little bit more, and make this color stand out a little bit more after we put in 3 layers. That's all we're going to focus on right now, is doing 3 layers. We have our base Ultramarine in black, and then the pure Ultramarine, and then we're going to add a little bit of white, and that's it. I got a little too much paint on your brush. If you can see a lot of paint on your brush, maybe you need to knock it down. You don't want it to be all globby on the end of your brush. But for these quick paint jobs, you're going to use thicker paint than you normally would. I'm a commission painter, so I have to learn how to step it up and step it down at times. So I have to make sure that my paint, I'm giving the customer what they want. If they want tabletop army, I'm going to paint a tabletop army. Add a few more layers. Now these layers act as a guideline for where I'm going to put my white and blue mix. So now you can kind of see the transition that's built up on the leg here. I'm going to take, again, some of my blue. I don't want to scoop down the ferrule, don't do that. The ferrule's the metal bit here on the paintbrush. Adding white, and I can see my white next to my blue right here. This is about 50-50. The black's stronger than the white when it comes to adjusting or changing the color. And so I have that previous layer. And I'm just going to add a highlight here. This isn't an edge. This is an edge, but I'm highlighting it. And then I'm going to go back and I'll do some edge highlighting a little bit later. But this is still basic. Basic. Create another line here. Fill it in. Now blue, if you're painting ultramarines, it's a really nice color because it's going to coat quickly. You don't need to sit there and mess with it like you do reds and oranges, things like that. They tend to be a little harder to work with, and I'm sure that if you've hung around the hobby store, you've heard people complain about those colors, and that's just due to what the pigment's made out of and how opaque it is over other materials. Not edging, I'm doing kind of a thick line, get my highlights in. I got a little bit of a place here I need to add some highlight to match what I got going on my boot. So we're starting to get some highlights that we can see on the table far away, but they're not going to look too great. They're not going to be blended, right? But that's not what we're looking for. We're just looking for basic. Create a little column highlight here that fits inside my previous colors. I'm not getting complicated with it. Just add in a highlight where I think there should be a highlight. Now, if you're painting an army this way, you can set 10 guys out, and you can do your base layer on all of them, and then you go back. You can do your secondary layer, and then you can go back and do your highlight. Assembly line, don't paint one model at a time. If you're trying to get an army done, paint an army. If you're working on characters now, you can go and paint them one at a time, but I don't know if you want to paint your characters up in this manner. All right, we're going to do some of the liquid skill here. This is the Citadel Non-Oil shade. Now they do make two different versions. You need to watch out for which one you get. There is a gloss and then there is a matte. The matte says nothing here at the bottom, but there's a gloss one, and that one is I'd wait to get that one. Let's use the heavier shade, because the gloss it doesn't like to to coat as well. It's more for layering. All right, when you're using washes, I recommend that you find you a cheap synthetic meaning the hairs on the brush are not, they don't come from an animal, they're plastic, they're nylon or some other material. And this is a liner. So this is really long bristles, and it's going to feed my wash where I want it to go, kind of like a fountain pen. And the good thing about it is you see all this black built up here on the end? That is dried wash. And you see how the brush is starting to get frayed at the end? That's because it got into the ferrule, and that's what happens to these brushes. So you don't want to use your good brushes with washes because it's going to destroy it a lot faster. Now if you've got a lot of money and you want to use your brushes for it, go ahead. But I tend to like to save money and use my tools with care. So we're going to load this brush up pretty good with the wash, and then we're not going to slather it on everything. What we're going to do is we're going to use it to kind of trace the lines. Alright, you see how it's unloading into the crack as the brush passes over that crack? That's what we want. And again, we don't have to be too careful with what we're doing now because this is for tabletop. But we can still make our tabletop and our quick models look good. We just can't spend as much time on them. And so we take all these little cracks and crevices and we add some of this wash. I'm going to do some at the bottom of his foot too, just for good measure. Got this little thing above this abnormally oversized ankle joint. And down here. I know a lot of people use washes as a way to just shade an entire model, and that is a good use for them. But for these, we're just going to go ahead and make the details pop out. So now we're getting some nice deep detail on this guy. One more little place right there. Go back and hit this a little bit more, get it darker. And we're not going to worry about the inside of the leg. We're just going to do this outside. All right. Now, one last thing for this color step. Get a detail brush back out. I'll work on the areas where the wash is dry. This is a good reason to work with multiple models as well, is that they'll be dry by the time you come back to them and you want to do the next step. You don't have to sit and, do everybody's favorite activity and watch paint dry. So here I'm going about 75% white, okay? I want to start edging. Now when you edge, you want to use the side of the brush, not the tip, because if I'm trying to use the tip, I'm trying to aim too much. So use the edge of the brush and use the model as what touches the brush, right? So if I use the side of my brush here, see, and just barely kind of touch it, then I could bring some edges out on this guy. Now that might be hard on some of these more shallow areas, but like these big ones here, I'm going to try and avoid the wash because I really don't want to contaminate. You see that little line that got picked up? And here on the side here, see how I'm trying not to get the tip of my brush where it's not supposed to be, which is in the wash. And I'm just scooting it or scraping it along the side of this model instead of trying to paint the edge. So that keeps me from getting shaky, wobbly edge lines. Places like this, you're gonna have to freehand, right? You're gonna have to go in, you're gonna have to hit it because that crevice just isn't deep enough. And then up here, I'm going to create my own highlight and border to the knee pad. And this circle Again, I can't use the edge of the brush on it, but I can use the tip of my brush to kind of curl around another highlight. Tip of the foot, I always like to put like a little swoosh on the foot there. Here on the front edge of the boot. My wash is still wet, so I'm trying not to get my good brush in my wash. And then figuring out where I want my edge highlights. I'm gonna curl this one around, soften it because I messed up. Here on the back of the leg, again, some of these edges are a little bit softer, so it might widen your line, but that's okay. This one, I have to paint. You notice it got a little bit wider because I'm trying to hit a crack there. And you see how I'm turning the model while I'm working? Like, never think you have to keep him standing up. He's not going to fall over. You just have a little bit of sticky tack on the end of this holder. And if you've never seen model holders before, you know, if you don't have any, you can use a thing of paint or whatever and use some sticky tack and put it on top. But if you have a bunch of holders, you can line up your guys and keep them with a nice big handheld or handhold on them. At the top of this boot some more. Let's see, let's get the top of this too. So what we're doing is we're putting bright color next to dark color, and that's going to give us our far away detail, right? And it's not anything complicated. It's just straight color on the model. Each time it's straight color. There's no blending, there's no glazing, there's nothing like that. You can go back and add those techniques to get your soft lines, but for now we're going to focus on basics. Let's get the basics down and how you can use those basics when you're starting out painting a model or painting models in general to get a good result without having to, you know, spend hours and hours and hours practicing. You want to paint your models. You want to get them on the table. And you'll start playing, you know. If any of you have watched my earlier videos, you can see you don't need to spend 100 hours on a model like I am. And, you know, paint a few models a night. Get a few steps on your models done in a night. You'll feel good. Feels real good to, you know, turn those lights off and look back and see that you've gotten a lot of work done. Because you've just been putting paint to model all night. And this is a two-step edge. So just like we layered our legs, going back and I'm following where I put those previous layers and I'm adding a little bit of an extra highlight. I'm not covering everything that I did. I'm just taking the high points and sort of grabbing those a little bit more, right? Because I want them to stand out just a little bit more. I want this Ultramarine to show off all his nice little panel lines. And I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna make more videos, and we're gonna finish this guy over the course of the videos. But for the sake of time and for the sake of your and my sanity, I'm not gonna paint this whole thing on camera. I'll go back, I'll do all the blue work, and then I'll show you guys how I do each little step. And he's a plasma marine, and like I said, he looks a little bit he's kind of got some caked paint on there, but he was a rescue. He was a consignment, and he had to be primed again. He had some thick paint. But that's it. That's all you gotta do. You do that for all your little armor panels, and you know, you have the majority of the model done. This is the bulk of it. And next video, let's focus on doing some of the metallics and the some of the detail areas. I'll show you guys how to do that. But if you got any questions, as always, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section there, and we'll see you guys next time.